So I'm lucky enough to work for Viva, and we are Europe's largest vegan campaigning group. And what that means is that we encourage people to go vegan in many different aspects. So one of the things that we're most known for is going undercover into farms and filming and exposing the reality of the farming industry and showing that it's not just factory farms, it's all farms that, you know, people need to boycott. Another aspect of what Viva do is all about things like vegan festivals as a more positive way of showing people about how amazing the vegan lifestyle is for your health, how enjoyable it can be, and how great it is for the planet. So if you could please, if you want to find out more about us, if you haven't already, visit our website. It's viva.org.uk. You can find out about other festivals that we're organising. You can find out more about the recent campaigns and just in general more about what we do, how you can get involved with helping Viva. And yes, so please visit us, join, donate. Thank you. So who here is a vegan? And who here considers themselves or identifies as a feminist? Now, has anybody thought about those two things being correlated before? And so that is what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to basically talk about the intersectionality between veganism and feminism. Now, the first thing to mention, this is not a new concept. This has been around for quite a long time. It was really big in the 80s, a type of feminism called ecofeminism. It was seen to be a little bit radical and essentially kind of got phased out, but a big part of ecofeminism, which is the biggest part that I personally identify with, they believed that there was a really strong connection between women and nature and the nurturing instinct within women, and therefore they believed that the feminist movement shouldn't just be about the oppression of women, but it should be about the oppression of all groups, which is people of colour, people of minorities, any social group that would face any discrimination. The feminist movement should include all of these groups. Now, including of this, they also believe that the feminist movement should include the oppression and the domination of things in nature. So the domination of land, air, water, and animals. So they included this in their feminist movement. So they believed that, you know, being vegetarian and vegan was a really strong correlation as identifying as a feminist. So moving on a little bit from that, in general, a key issue of the feminist movement is a woman's right to regain control of her body. Now, throughout history, you know, women have been seen as property of men, and this is what women have been fighting against, and this has been one of the big things with the feminist movement. So part of this is a woman's right to her own body, which means the woman's right to our sexuality, our reproductive system, contraception, things like abortion, or having the choices and the control over those issues. A lot of us have been lucky enough to grow up in a time and a culture where, you know, we do have control over our bodies, we do have the right to contraception, we get to choose if and when we have children, we get to choose if and when we have sex, we get to choose who we have sex with, all these things. We are incredibly lucky that we've grown up in this culture and this time. It's obviously important to say that sadly there are a lot of cultures out there that this still isn't the case. But in our culture, it wasn't until 1991 that rape within a marriage became illegal. So in other words, that meant when a woman married, she would become property, her body was property of her husband's. And that's so recent, that's so recent. And so we forget how much has changed in such little time. And so my main point today is that if we have fought so hard and feel so strongly about a woman's right to her body, why should it be the same for any other female animal? I believe that we should fight to abolish all forms of oppression and to truly consider ourselves intersectional feminists. Why should there be such a divide between a social justice movement and an animal rights movement when we're all animals, we're all females, all males, or children, or mothers? Now, this distinction is known as speciesism, and that is the assignment to different moral values based purely on a species. You could argue that this is the same as people assigning different moral values based on people's skin colour, sexuality, age, any kind of discriminatory category that you could be in. So I've spoken about women's rights and our reproductive system. So leading on from that, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the dairy industry. I'm not sure, I know there's a lot of vegans in the room, you might be quite aware already, but I am going to go through a few things just for any of you who don't know. Now, sadly, a lot of people don't realise the brutality of the meat and dairy industry and how it constantly abuses the female reproductive system for dairy cows. So a little while ago there was a study conducted where people went out onto the streets and just asked random people, why do cows produce milk? And the resounding answer, people were quite baffled. It's something that had never occurred to them before. And so the resounding answer was, I don't know. Now, so who here knows why a cow produces milk? Yes, so exactly the same as human. They do so after a 9-month pregnancy to feed their calf. Now, calves in the dairy industry will be taken from the mother within a day or two of their lives, and this is done so that humans, they can be milked so that humans can consume the cow's milk that would naturally go to the calf. A female cow would naturally live between 20 and 30 years, and in the dairy industry, she'll live to around 5. There's an assumption that farm animals don't suffer, or any animals suffer the way we do. Because people think that they are less intelligent than us, and they don't have any self of sense. When actually there's so much research out there that proves this is so untrue. It's just a misconception that cows are docile or stupid. They nurture friendships, they bear grudges, they get excited by intellectual challenges. Cows actually share the same basic brain structure as us that's responsible for emotion, which means that they feel fear, pain, anxiety, and happiness exactly the same way that we do. Now, when a mother loses a child, it would cause grief that most of us couldn't even fathom. And this statement is true of humans, and it is also true of animals, of cows. And there's footage of cows running after their young that's being dragged from them, and they cry. I've heard people who live near dairy farms, and they say that they can hear the mothers. They do this thing called bellowing. It's a particular type of cry, and it's when they're crying and pining for the babies that have been taken from them. And it causes equal distress, obviously, to the baby that's gone and doesn't have a mother. Now, when the calf's taken from the mother, if it's a male calf, this calf will either be basically instantly killed because it is of no use to the industry, because it's not bred for meat, it's a different kind of calf, so it won't go to meat, and they'll just be taken outside and shot. If it's a farm that deals with veal, then it will go, a male calf will go straight to live in sheds like this for maybe a month or two, where they are malnourished to produce veal. Now, this is the image of a modern dairy cow. I don't know if you can see, her legs are shackled together like that. The reason that is, you see the weight of her udder is so heavy, her legs are shackled together to literally stop her legs from essentially doing the splits because of the weight, and it's so unnatural for her. She will be confined into what farmers accurately call a rape rack and be artificially inseminated shortly after her first birthday. So she will be, once she's given birth, then her offspring will be taken from her and she will be milked, and the milk will go to the humans. Now this happens repeatedly, so that means that once she's had her first baby and the baby is taken from them, she will be immediately impregnated again, and she will be both being milked, and pregnant at the same time. So milked and pregnant at the same time. Now this causes, can you imagine, this is extreme things that are happening to her body, and that's why she will maybe last around 5 to 6 years, because her body just can't take, she can't continue doing that strain on her body. Now, this extreme physical demand it will lead to things like infertility, serious painful infections such as mastitis and laminitis. And when she can take no more, she will be killed and sold for cheap meat products such as pies, pasties, and baby food. So to put this into perspective, Can you imagine if women, young girls, were being impregnated forcibly shortly after they've had their first period and then having their baby taken from them, and this happening repeatedly until she's around the age of 25 and then she's killed? That's exactly what's happening by the million on a daily basis in the UK and God knows how many other countries. There's a quote from Professor John Webster. The dairy cow is exposed to more abnormal physiological demands than any other class of farm animal, making her an extreme example of an overworked mother. Viva ran this campaign earlier in the year in correlation with Mother's Day, so we door dropped these leaflets all over the UK, Britain's hardest working mother, because I think that is it just sums it up. So there are 1.8 million of these dairy cows in the UK alone, and there are 500 baby calves sent to slaughter every single day in Britain. Now, another really important thing to mention is hormones. So this is something that is not just dairy, it's in a lot of other, it's included in meat, but it's part of the whole meat and dairy industry. Now, there are proteins in a cow's milk that is designed to help that calf grow. However, when a human drinks that milk, it triggers something in our body called IGF-1, which is a hormone called insulin-like growth factor. And this hormone directly links with things like, with several common types of cancer, things like breast cancer, prostate, lung, and colon. Scientists have also suggested, and there's been quite a lot of research gone into it, is that dairy and meat products, the proteins in these products, have also linked to girls going into early onset puberty. So ages such as like 9, 10, 11 are becoming more and more common for girls to starting their periods, which is just not natural. Dr. Michael Greger, he's the author of the book How Not to Die. He's an incredible man. He's a very good speaker. Look him up. He did a study on this, and yeah, he also says that. This is his book here. It says early onset puberty, it's a risk factor of a number of diseases. So not only is it just an unnatural thing for women to go through that's caused by these hormones, it can actually lead to diseases later on in life. It can make you more likely to get certain diseases. So really, if you think about it, this in itself is a separate feminist issue other than the links with women seeing as property, because we are being told by the government, by doctors, by teachers, growing up everywhere, that we need to consume a product because it's good for us and it's our source of calcium. Who got told in school that they needed to drink milk for calcium? Yeah, I remember there being posters everywhere about it. It was one of the things, like, milk is calcium. And why would you question that? That's what we're being told by the people essentially of authority. That's the people who should know. But they're telling us to consume this product because we need it, and this very product has the potential to change our body's natural rate of development and lead to life-threatening diseases. That's how corrupt this industry is. False advertising of nutrition is it's a huge problem in the dairy industry. It's this misleading information that we've been told about it being healthy and about it being good for us. Another really big thing with not just false advertising, but advertising in general of dairy, you may have noticed this, and it's been a really common theme for years and years and years now, is that it's really common for dairy adverts to sexually objectify women. It's a real theme. I don't know, so this was going back to being in school and being told, I don't know if you remember this advert, Petit Fillet to make your bones grow big and strong. But yeah, so adverts like this is like dairy products is just, again, so you think about it, the dairy industry is very anti-feminist on so many different levels. Now, also, to point out, the dairy industry, there's about to be a whole load of these adverts hit your screens on a big scale. So the dairy industry have a massive, massive advertising budget, but the bottom line is they are doing this because they are scared, because their products, their sales are dropping. So we are making a difference, that things are heading in the right direction, and they are noticing that more and more people are choosing to not consume their product, and it's scaring them, and they have a huge budget, and they are about to bombard your screens, your buses, all the posters, because they want people to buy their product. But just stay strong, just remember. So, moving on from dairy, I'm going to talk to you quickly about chickens. Now, sadly, it's the same situation as in the dairy, is that chickens, their reproductive systems are being, again, exploited. So, sadly, chickens are one of the most abused animals on this planet. Now, female chickens can be wonderful mothers, but in the farming industry, they will never get a chance to interact with their chicks. So there are 3 different types of chickens in the farming industry. There are breeders, broilers, and egg layers. So breeders are confined to sheds that will, either with other males, they'll be forced to mate, or they'll be artificially inseminated. So they are laying eggs that have been fertilised eggs. So those eggs will hatch into chicks. So when these chickens lay eggs, their eggs will be immediately taken from them and they'll be sent to a hatchery. So the chicks will be born in basically a factory, away from their mother, with no nourishment or no support from the mother. They're taken away. Now, if those chicks are male chicks that are born, again, they're of no use to the industry, so they will be killed by the million every day. So they will be killed by over suffocating, gassing, or actually sometimes being like ground. It's horrendous, but they will just be killed. And if it's a female, then that female will then go to basically following the footsteps of the mother and become a breeder. Now, broiler chickens. Broilers are raised for meat. These are male and female chickens. Now, these chickens are selectively bred to reach slaughter size at 41 days. So that means that this chicken gets to live on this planet for a whole 41 days, when it would naturally live to like 5 to 10 years. Now, so the third type of chicken are laying hens. Now, laying hens are hens that lay unfertilised eggs. Does anybody know why a hen would lay an unfertilised egg? Yeah, you're right. It's exactly the same as a woman having her period. So when we don't have a period, it's because we are pregnant. But when we're not pregnant, our body is releasing unfertilised eggs, and that's exactly what is happening with the chicken when they lay unfertilised eggs. Now, in nature, and when I say in nature, this is before humans have had any involvement in the sort of breeding and the selectively breeding process of chickens, they would naturally lay to between 20 and 30 eggs a year. In farming industries and common practices, they are forced to lay around 300 eggs per year. So that means that they are laying constantly throughout the year. Don't know about any of you, I would not want to be on my period for a whole year. That sounds like my idea of hell. So this is what's happening to these chickens, and they do this by messing with their body clocks, by basically high protein feed. They take them out of any natural sort of environment, so they have no idea what time of the year, what time of the day it is. So it's completely unnatural environments for these hens. Now, there are 12.2 billion eggs consumed in Britain every year. And to keep up that rate of production, that means there are 36 million egg-laying hens in the UK. And for this to do that, they are housed in absolutely horrendous conditions. There's usually around 30,000 of them in one shed. Like, they're just crammed in there, and it's really just terrible. Now, when I talk to people about this and about egg consumption in particular, they say, oh yeah, but eggs, they naturally lay eggs. It's okay if we eat them because, they're just doing it anyway. And then I say, oh, what about battery farming though? Battery farming is really bad. Or like farming, and they say, oh yeah, battery farming. No, we only buy free range. And the problem is the actual standards and regulations to classify any farm as being free range are bare minimum guidelines at best, which means there's basically no regulations for the animal welfare people to, like, the standards are so low that a free range farm will be no better than any other farm. So, but why would anyone know that? We're told free range, we advertise with pictures of happy hens running around fields, and we're told that is what free range is. And why would we know any different? Because it's really quite very well hidden. You know, we don't see factory farms, and we don't really see any farms, they're private property. So, now there's company, this is a quote from a massive chicken, a massive factory farming industry. It says about them, they're advertising this as like a positive thing. They're saying, we are striving to breed hens that will produce 500 eggs a year, not just 300, but 500. They want to push it even further. And the way that they are seeing this wording of this quote, you can just see that they're not seeing these chickens or these hens as living beings. They're not as sentient beings. They're not seeing them as mothers. They're not seeing them as babies. But that is exactly what they are. They are living creatures, just as we are living creatures. Animals are continuously seen as tools to be put on this planet to be used by humans. Whether it's for, for food, for companionship, for medicine, for experiments, the list goes on and on. We have been doing this since, I don't know how long, since a long time. And throughout history, sadly still in some cultures, this is the way women have been seen, or sometimes still are seen, as property, and it's as a tool. In our culture still, when a man asks a woman to marry him, he'll go to the father of that woman and say, can I marry your daughter? Can I have your hand? And the father will say yes. Now most people don't question that because it's in our tradition and it's a nice tradition. But that tradition comes from when a daughter, was seen as property of her father until she then married and became property of her husband. This view of ownership and property is what we have fought against for so long, and we've fought so hard for it. Yet it's still happening by the million every day in these farms. Now, animals being owned, exploited and abused to benefit humans. There's an amazing quote by Alice Walker. She's a fantastic feminist. She's the author of The Colour Purple. Animals of this world exist for their own reasons. They were not made for humans any more than black people were made for whites or women for men. And that, for me, sums it up. Now, I just want to make very clear that the point of this talk was not to say that female animals are treated worse than male animals in the industry, because that's absolutely not the case. My point today is that if you consider yourself a feminist in any way, then you need to be aware of these issues and the reality of the meat and dairy industry. And also remember that you do have the power to choose to not support this industry simply by choosing what you buy in the supermarket. So thank you very much for listening.